I think about when we bought our last property and the rate that we got, and comparing that to what's out there now, it's kind of like, wow, like these rates are going to make a substantial impact on whatever financial decisions, or especially from a loan perspective, that people are looking to take out.
I think a lot of people think having nice things is a reflection of wealth, but really having nice things just means you're trading wealth for those things.
That doesn't mean go out and start picking all this different stock. You just heard a hot stock tip. You heard about Nvidia. Everybody's multimillionaire, so I need to go buy some now. But either way, shout out to Nvidia. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Wealth Wave podcast. I'm Toyyib Morakinyo, your host for today. As you can see or you can tell, Caleb is out of office. The man is already taking vacation 25 days into the new year. But that is all right. The show must go on. And as always, our goal is to educate, enlighten, and entertain you on technology, economy, and real estate while inspiring you to take action. And today we'll be discussing personal finance, the economy, and of course, the latest on artificial intelligence. And to do just that, we have two amazing guests, folks that I respect greatly, and I'm so glad to have you on. First, we have a returning guest in Busola, Oyefesobi-Ero, who is a transformative compliance audit executive. We are talking 15 plus years of consulting experience, solving complex risk challenges for different organizations. She is also a certified public accountant, licensed in 4 states in counting. Let us know once you add additional states. Very passionate about financial health and literacy. So glad to have you back on, Busola. Welcome back.
Awesome. Thank you, Toyyib. Thanks for having me. It's been a while, so I'm glad that I did not ruin my first invite, and I'm excited to be part of the program today.
No way at all. It's certainly a pleasure to have you back on. And first time joining our podcast today is my good brother, Alhaji Ba, who is also, a brilliant engineer and finance leader. The man has over a decade experience in the aerospace and defense industry. We are talking a man who also holds a bachelor's of science in mechanical engineering and is currently an MBA student concentrating on finance and entrepreneurship. Alhaji, how's it going, brother?
Hey, going well. Thankful to be on here and excited to have this discussion.
No, not at all. So great to see you again. And just for some context for folks listening, so myself and Alhaji, we go back almost over a decade now. We both met when we were much younger folks, fresh out of college, young engineers in the aerospace industry together. And, first time I met Alhaji probably was in the library or something like that.
Yeah.
And the man was about his business. So that lets you know, when you meet someone in the library, that's somebody who's studious, wants to go the right way, and he's about his business. And we've been able to build a friendship since then. So not surprised by all the great success that you've had over the years. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. You were in the library too, so.
Yeah, that was me studying for my MBA at the time, and now, right, almost full circle, you're getting yours as well now. So I'm glad I'm not in school.
Okay. That's a much different world from when I got my MBA. It's not the same at all. It's not the same.
Exactly. Things have changed. So with that, let's dive right into the first topic, right? We're talking personal finance. And as you all can expect, it's new year, new me for a lot of folks. People are making their New Year's resolution. They're planning out their goals. And I guess no surprise, the number one goal is always around finance for a lot of people, a lot of Americans. In fact, saving more money was the number one New Year resolution goal for many Americans. But at the same time, which is from a latest poll by MarketWatch. But at the same time, it also reports that credit card debt is up 40% over the past 4 years to now $1.1 trillion. That's a staggering number, $1.1 trillion over the last 4 years. So let's just jump right into it. Busola, you're an expert in this area. Why is it that so many people, so many of us really struggle with our finances? Like, what is it about this finance that we just can't get right?
It's a very complex matter, you know. When you think the first thing is when you think about the economy has just been changing. There's inflation. Some days I go to the grocery stores and I kind of want to cry because I'm like, what is going on? I went in there just to get two things and I look at my bill and I want to cry because I'm shocked as to how much it's costing, but at the same time, I'm also grateful that I can afford it and I can just continue with my checkout process. But there are some folks that don't have that opportunity. And there are some folks that have to reevaluate what they're buying just based on what things are costing.
Absolutely.
Jobs pay is not going up as well as the cost of living is going up, right? So we have people that are probably maintaining the same lifestyle that they've had with no lifestyle creep, but they just can't afford it because their paycheck is not moving along with the cost of inflation.
Yeah.
And then you also have those that have the slowly but growing lifestyle creep where, you know, I'm making a lot of money now, or I'm making a substantial amount of money now. I want to do this, I want to do that without really taking a full look at what their financial place is. And I tell people, when you think about yourself as a business, right? How much is coming in and how much is going out? My husband hates this, but every week, every month, we're looking at our finances. End of 2024, we're sitting out, we're doing what is our budget for next year? How did we meet our budget for this year? What changes do we need to make, right? We have a few places that we definitely need to cut down on. And if we don't cut down on, we're going to be in trouble. And it's a difficult conversation. And those are conversations that many times people don't want to have because they just don't want to have a full scope of what their finances look like. And if they can afford rent, they can afford the necessities. They just want to keep going without worrying about everything else.
Kicking the can down, right, and figure out, hey, we'll figure it out when we get there. But you make a great point around inflation. Alhaji, what is your take on that and kind of
Yeah,
struggle with finances and what's all this
yeah,
place?
not that different from what Busola said, right? At the end of the day, it's money in, money out. So how do you maximize the money in? How do you minimize the money out? And obviously, inflation's a real thing. Things are becoming more expensive. So I think that's definitely something to acknowledge. On the other end, it's, again, Bukola touched on this. It's really people managing their budget, right? A lot of people don't even have a budget. How do you set a budget so that you can actually save some money, right? And it's not keeping up with the Joneses, understanding. I think a lot of people think having nice things is a reflection of wealth, but really having nice things just means you're trading wealth for those things, right? So when you realize that, then it's okay. How do I have maybe less nice things so I can have more wealth? And that wealth ultimately gives you more flexibility, gives you peace of mind, probably makes your marriage a little more
Mm-hmm.
marriage safer. So all those things, right? But ultimately, it's managing how much you're spending, right? And then how do you optimize what you're making? And I know it's hard right now with. I don't want to say the economy is bad because actually I think the economy is doing very well. However, to Basola's point, there's wealth disparity, right? Income disparity. All that money is going to the top few people where maybe I think the three richest people in the country have more wealth than the bottom 50%,
It's
right?
nuts. Yeah.
It's insane. So that's something I think from a structural standpoint that has to be addressed. But for the most part, what you can do is minimize how much you're spending.
Yeah. No, I mean, those are great points, and I mean,
Yeah.
you all touch on it. I've got here, and maybe similar to what you both are mentioning. I think it comes down to two things, though: knowledge and discipline. If you think about the knowledge side, and I'll speak for me. As young immigrant, my mom came to the United States in 1995. Right, we're talking 30 plus years now. I came here when I was 10, 9, and as a young immigrant, you don't necessarily have, I think, the knowledge around how the money supply work in the US. How do I think about debt and mortgages and maximize my earnings and minimize some of my expenses? So you just think, how do I just make enough money to pay my bills? So I think oftentimes growing up, you lack the knowledge. And a lot of the knowledge from me personally that I've gotten has been post college when I started to work, trial and error, making money, losing money, increasing expenses. that lifestyle has been where a lot of my knowledge has come from. And I can certainly relate with a lot of people where you just don't always have that knowledge around how should I be properly managing my money, because your upbringing, money is not talked about often in a lot of our societies. It's a taboo. We just know mom and dad pay the bill and that was it. We don't talk about money. So where's my knowledge supposed to come from? But I will give a huge credit and shout out to Junior Achievement for those who do not know, so Alhaji, you probably be familiar with Junior Achievement as well. It's a nonprofit, but their mission is really how do we go around inspiring young people for success and financial literacy, especially as they go through. And I volunteered here a couple of times, actually back in my Connecticut days. But it was good to go out into some of these schools and educating some of these young minds about money, because we sometimes lack the knowledge. And then, to the second point, which is where you both have touched upon, is the discipline portion of it. It's a journey now, right? You want nice things. We all struggle, and Instagram and social media doesn't always make it easy, right? And listen, my dream is to own nice cars and a nice house, and live okay. But absolutely, what is the discipline that you have? Because at some point there has to be a sacrifice. Trading some of those, right? Hey, forego some things today so you can have more tomorrow. So, what are your thoughts on social media and where you think maybe how that's impacting some of the discipline that maybe some of us might be lacking?
I think it's definitely impacting it because on social media, right, we see what the contact provider wants us to see. We don't know what goes on in the background, right? So you see all these people, you see what they want you to see from a specific lens. You don't know what they're suffering with in the background or what they did to get to where they are. All you just see is like, oh, this person went on this trip today. This person bought this house today. This person's bought this car today. But like what actually goes into it, right? I know some people that like when you hear their story, they're like, yeah, I just want people to see the good thing, but like I'm not sharing the suffering part of it. And that's part of where the issue comes into play. And to the point, Toyyib, that you make where it's like growing up, our parents didn't share the struggles with us, right? We just know that things got done. But as we got older and we started to look more into their lives, we're like, damn, our parents were going through it. Like, how did they afford this many kids and like nice things? And like, we never felt deprived of stuff.
Right.
And that's the thing where it's like, but I think there are also some social media aspect where people are being honest and showing what the reality is. But a lot of people are not gravitating towards that. So as time goes on, it's always going to be that way where it's like people only see the good things and not the full picture and are making assumptions and decisions based on that.
Yeah.
I agree with a lot of that. As someone who's not on social media, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on Twitter, whatever it is that the kids TikTok. For me, it was a conscious decision to just opt out. Right? Obviously, it's a trade-off, but again, it just wasn't worth it to me because of those very things that Busola just mentioned. To me, social media is just people's highlight reels, right?
Yeah.
And just when I think of an athlete, right, you'll do whatever it takes to have those highlights. So when you send that highlight tape in, people say, wow, this is great. And for me, it's not real life. And the reality is it's exploiting just human attributes. You're like the 7 deadly sins, but these are things that are universal, right? Envy, greed, just when you see all these things, you want more of it, right? If you see someone's living this lavish lifestyle, how do I get that lifestyle? And it comes back to a really fundamental rule of money for me, right? It's not about like swinging for the fences every day. It's making good decisions that might give you not the biggest returns, but making those decisions consistently, right? And if you can do that, I think you'll end up well. Social media leads people to feeling like they have to become a millionaire overnight. When you think of someone like Warren Buffett, who didn't make 97% of his wealth until after he's 65, right? It's counterintuitive and it doesn't work with real life. So one of the reasons why I avoid it, and I definitely think it's a negative impact on not just people's finance, but also their mental health and other things.
Yeah. I mean, you made a great point there around also the exploitation aspect of it. Because to your point, I mean, the US, I mean, this is so super heavy consumption driven, right? A lot of our marketing, a lot of the machines is how do I get more and more people to spend more and more, right? So the topic of being fiscally disciplined and responsible is rarely ever talked about, right? So like the marketing agencies are playing on, hey, how do I get you to open up your wallet? So when the ads come up and it certainly evokes those emotions and you get involved in it and you're like, oh yeah, I want this, and the travels and everything looks nice, and I think it does prey on the human emotion and it wants you to spend money. So if you're not conscious about it, you lose yourself. And especially, we all, as you get older, you can become busy, and it's family and kids and parents, you start to lose sight of those things, and it's easy to become less disciplined than you would. So I want to go here around the purpose of money. Also has to have a purpose in, how I use it and what I use it for. And you talked earlier about at the beginning of the year, setting a budget, doing your budgeting, planning, and how do I look forward to. What are some basic mistakes around financial planning or budgeting that you see a lot of people make, and that maybe we should be aware of as well, planning our own budget for the year?
I think being realistic is the biggest thing, right? And having that honest and tough conversation with yourself or your family or whoever you're planning this budget with is like because you can't just, okay, you know what? This month I'm going to spend $100 on grocery, $20 on gas. How is that realistic if last month you spent $300 on grocery and $400 on gas? Are you basically saying you're not driving anywhere? So it's like being realistic. And that starts with looking at how have you done in the past? So for us, when we start our budget, and it's like, how did we do in 2024? What did we spend our money on? And what are the various categories, right? Were there any one-off transactions? For example, we did a project in our backyard, so we know that's not happening again this year. So from a home expense perspective, our budget for 2025 went down compared to what we actually spent in 2024 because we know we're not having that one-off budget again, right? So the first thing is being realistic. If you set up a realistic budget, you're setting yourself up for success. It's always good to want to try to reach for the stars, but at the same time, you have to be realistic, right? Yeah. If you know that, you know what, I spent $10 last month, but this month I'm going to spend $5. It's going to be hard, but I want to push myself, right? That's a goal, okay? So then what are the steps to help you get there? What are the items that you spent on that you think you might want to reduce on? For a lot of us, the quick wins are eating out, because who doesn't love eating out? The convenience, the speed, just trying different things and not being in the kitchen 24/7, right? So can I reduce how much I'm eating out? Or you know what? Rather than going to a nice restaurant every weekend, can I maybe just go twice a month, right? So looking at what are some of those low-hanging fruits that can be some quick wins, and kind of what you said, right? It's a trade-in, right? I want to go on a trip. Can I not eat out for a month so that way I can have a little bit more so that when I go on my trip, I can eat out every day and not be conscious that, wow, I spent all this money on this trip, and then you don't end up having fun.
Good point. Alhaji, what are your tips on budgeting?
I'm maybe too simple, but I tend to, I think I'll give you these really simple models, right? Like money in, money out. I think if you wanna lose weight, it's calories in, calories out. Eat less food, right? And if you really need to lose weight, you might need to starve for a little bit. That's how I think of money, right? It doesn't have to be hard. I mean, easy. Sometimes you got to do the hard thing and do it hard to get yourself in a good place, and then maybe you relax a little. When I started working at Pratt in 2013, I would buy a loaf of bread and I would take it to work. Okay. And I would get a jar of peanut butter and I would take it to work. And that was my lunch for the week. I would make peanut butter and bread sandwiches every day during the week. Right. Again, it doesn't sound fun. Sure. I'd like to go out and eat. But ultimately, if I want to put myself in a good position, sometimes you do things that are uncomfortable. And I think so many people want to keep things comfortable, right? And obviously Busola hit it, budget, but it doesn't always have to be easy. It doesn't always have to be comfortable. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to do that hard thing to better position yourself where you do have all the options and flexibility that you do desire long term. It's kind of how I look at those things.
I don't think you're carrying a loaf of bread to work anymore these days. So, and listen, keep in mind, he was young and single at the time. I'm not sure how much of that you can do these days. All right.
No, you're so right. And to that point, like I literally was having this conversation recently with my wife. I'm so thankful I did those things back then, because quite frankly, I can't now. And Busola, I think you mentioned this earlier, where you said going to the grocery store, seeing how expensive things are, and like fortunately you can afford it. That's how I feel right now, where I'm like, if I wasn't saving and investing aggressively early on, what would I do today? Where I don't have as much leeway. I can't just eat bread for lunch, right? I got a wife that likes nice things, and I got 2 kids. So, and that's why it's so important to your point earlier, Toyyib, about just that education, that information, right? And really being disciplined early, because you don't know what the future holds. But by optimizing today, you really best position yourself for the things that come up down the road.
And then to that point as well, right? You have some folks who probably will say, you know what, I don't even have enough coming in to begin with to cover my necessities. How am I going to do it, right? For some people, they can get a side hustle to kind of help supplement it, but for some people, they need to just make like hard decision. Like, okay, you know what? I drive X car. My car note is X amount of money. I need to give up that car and get a more affordable car because there's just no way around it, right? I have someone who I used to work with, well, not work with officially, but I used to provide guidance to them from a financial perspective. And unfortunately, in the height of all the layoffs that were happening, they got laid off. This person was able to survive not having a job and not having income for over a year, just based on some of the aggressive method that they did coming up in their career. So imagine if you aren't able to make those decisions and you don't have a budget and you get laid off. Like, how do you survive a year without any money coming in?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's spot on, right? I mean, on the budgeting side, a lot of people look at it as, oh, it's restrictive, but to that, I would say, budgeting is freedom. And Alhaji, right, it hides on kind of what you talked about early, which is by doing hard things today, you can have easier life tomorrow, right? And and I'm forever grateful for that as well, of being able to, be a hard saver earlier, because right now it's certainly a little tougher. Everybody want nice things and all that fun stuff. But thank God I was able to have at least over 10 years of doing okay. So things are all right. But to your point, it's if you're not willing to do the hard things and early on budgeting, looking at what's coming in and making those tough decisions, give you an opportunity to be freer and be able to do more things tomorrow. And I think maybe that framing makes it easier for a lot of people, because oftentimes it's, oh, I'm making all this money, I don't want the restriction, and why sacrifice? There's a bigger payoff at the back end if you do the right things early on, and maybe that's what a lot of folks are missing now. It's tougher, but absolutely, having more money in the bank allows you to sleep a little bit well at night. When you're hearing about layoffs, you might panic a little bit, but maybe not as much as somebody who's overspending some of their money. So it's super important that we talk about that, which then transitions now to where we are on inflation. Right, prices are going up, but we did see, call it the consumer price index, which really measures inflationary rate, roughly recently reported at 2.7%. So a little bit, it's coming down below the 3%. Was it 2% target that the Feds want? What are your takes around how you're looking? Is inflation still a concern? How are you seeing it trending as you look through the rest of the year? Alhaji, you want it?
Sure, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
It's hard, right? Like, none of this stuff is simple. You have people who are the world leading experts trying to figure it out. I think the last report is for last month, it was 0.4, right? The Fed's target, as you mentioned, like 2 to 3% a year. That led to 2.7% for the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. But I mean, 0.4 times 12 is like a little over 3%, right? The reality is we don't know. What we can do is, like, you look at the 10-year treasury yields, people expect inflation to stick around a little longer, is what that's saying, right? You look, which obviously impacts mortgage rates. People think the economy reports are good, right? Which is not good for the Fed rate, right? So when you look at all those things, it's hard to say we're through it. There almost has to be something that comes and just changes how things are going. But the way things are going, companies are reporting record number of profits still. Everything's economy looks very strong, which means it's just less likely for the Fed to bring down rates, right? It's how I look at it. And then also because of that, it means that you need higher returns on those 10-year treasuries, which impact other things as well from a long-term standpoint. So again, I'm hoping I have a horse in this race. So I'm hoping rates come down, but I don't know how realistic that's going to be, especially for long-term lending.
Yeah, definitely. And then it kind of goes back to what can you control, right? And how do you put yourself in a good lane, so that way, regardless of what happens outside of your control, you're still able to continue your race, right? And that's kind of where people need to kind of look in their house and say, okay, well, what can I do differently? What should I be doing differently, right? If you're looking to kind of make a large purchase now, really evaluate the purpose of why you're making that purchase, right? And do you have funds? Do you have enough funds? Because like Alhaji mentioned, the rates these days are the rates are through the roof. I think about when we bought our last property and the rate that we got, and comparing that to what's out there now, it's kind of like, wow, like these rates are going to make a substantial impact on whatever financial decisions, or especially from a loan perspective, that people are looking to take out. So those are things that people do need to consider: is what impact is this going to have? What can I control to kind of put myself in a good position?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's spot on. And you talked about the 10-year treasury yield there, and like it's showing signs that, hey, it's going to be a higher for a little longer. And it's funny enough, I remember back in 2022, or it might be early 23, I was at a real estate conference. And I remember the experts on the stage were talking, hey, as investors, we need to buy, but we just need to make it through to 25. And 25 things will start to ease a little bit. Well, I was just at the same conference, call it the end of last year, and these same experts are saying, no, guys, we need to now survive through 25, 26, and potentially looking at 2028, then maybe interest rates might start to come down a little bit. So just to let you know how some of the experts have gotten it wrong, but also where we are, which is it's going to be a bit more sticky than maybe what we thought. And mortgage rates are at 7%, when, to your point, 60% of some of those homeowners have maybe less than 4% on there. It's making it hard for them to want to leave when you're quoting me 6-7% on the mortgage when I'm currently at 3 or 2.5. It makes it harder. No one really wants to sell. We still have, I'm on the real estate side, so supply and demand metrics there that we're tracking, but it's still a concern. And then the economy, certainly looking good. The stock market was up 20+% last year, 20+% the year before that. Feds has already cut rates 4 times last year. They're expected to only do 2 this year, right? So we'll see how much of that is real, and if that gets revised down to just 1, But I think it's just all that to say, it's not going away anytime soon. We all need to get real and look at your income, your expenses, where am I managing, and how do I survive through, depending on what your situation is, right, through that. Which then, right, we have a lot of folks who might be listening saying, okay, well, what should I be doing with my money then? I think a lot about investing, of course. So I want to push it to you all, and both one, how should we then be investing our current assets, given the current economy and inflation conditions? Where are you all investing your money right now, based on where things are? Where's the opportunity?
I think the first thing is to understand, what is your risk appetite, because what's going to work for Alhaji might not work for Toyyib.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, early in my career, I was working so hard that I refused to do any investing, because I'm like, I'm not about to lose my money, because I'm not about to put 10K in the stock market and then to end up with 0, because that wasn't my risk appetite. So for me, it was more consumable things. So for me, it was real estate, right? But for some people, they don't like real estate because they're like, what if I don't get a tenant? Or if they're using it for like short-term leasing, all of these cities these days are changing their regulations regarding licensing and like what's allowed or not, right? So the first step is understand what your risk appetite is. And a lot of these financial houses have programs, and they have quizzes and advisors that can speak to you for free consultation to understand what is your risk appetite in order to help determine how should you proceed with your investment. So I don't like saying I'm doing this, I'm doing that, because someone might think, what, this person is oldie grill, let me do what they do, and then there's different results. So I would say, understand what your risk appetite is, understand what the options are, and decide what's best for you and your financial situation.
Yeah. That's a good one. Real estate is always good. I'm going to push that. Go ahead.
I think this is really one of those topics where education is so critical, right? Yeah. Information is so important. It's vital, right? The things that seem common sense, intuitive, aren't necessarily what we should be doing, right? And it's just, I guess maybe it's hard for people to find the information they need on what to do, on how to invest their money. You know this, Toyyib. I'm personally just a big fan of index investing, right? I think again, because of how people are, right? Our worldview is just based on our experiences, but there's just so much beyond that, right? So you're making decisions based off of anecdotes, right? So how do you get large data that actually gives you a trend on something that you can go with, right? So, for example, Toyyib has done really well in his life, I probably shouldn't do just everything he's doing. He's an exception in so many different ways, right? But I think if you can see a large sample and you see trends there, for me, that gives me a lot more confidence is, okay, this is something that's within reach. This is something that's realistic. This is something that, again, the odds are in my favor, right? It might not work out, but at least I'm betting on something that's good or that has high odds, right? Because everything is probabilities. With that, that's why I think index investing is the way. Obviously, buying real estate, I think, is good if it makes sense, but you got to do the numbers. It's not just this simple thing. Oh, buy a house, rent it, make money. And the reason why I keep saying index because one, it's passive, right? You don't have to do anything. You just buy this thing. Two, you're betting on more or less the U.S. economy, especially if you're doing like a total market index or S&P 500 index. And if you're betting on the U.S. economy, well, you're making dollars here. So if that falters, like everything else is faltering, right? If that falters, even real estate prices are coming down. If that falters, your money might not even be in your bank account anymore. So for me, it's hard to not see that as just the primary vehicle for investing. Just because, again, in my mind, you're betting on the biggest companies in America who ultimately, in my opinion, run the country, right? And
definitely run the country. I don't know. I don't know how debatable that even is at any point. But I mean, those are really great points, and so I certainly agree with you around, what is your risk appetite, and that's important, and maybe that is the foundation first on, what is your risk appetite, what is your long term goals, but then we talk about framework, right? It's the KISS. I also think about finance as or investment as keep it simple, silly, right? Like let's keep it simple. There's so many. I think oftentimes people think investment or where should I put my money, and they think I need to be putting in 15, 20, 500 different things. And I found that maybe I don't think that's necessarily the right way, right? If you keep it simple, I think that there's a couple of options there. Whether it's let me start in the stock market. And that doesn't mean go out and start picking all this different stock. You just heard a hot stock tip. You heard about NVIDIA. Everybody's multimillionaire. So I need to go buy some now. But either way, shout out to NVIDIA though. Love that company. But to that point, as you mentioned it, index funds are a great way to at least invest in the stock market, to bet on the U.S. economy without necessarily having to do the work of what's the specific stock that I want. And we'll find, especially I think in 2025, there's so many also different platforms to get exposure to even real estate, where you can have it also in a passive form, whether it's pulling your funds together as on different platforms. And so there's so many different ways to do it. But it's get the knowledge, but also keep it simple, right? Keep it simple. There's no need for the over complexity that I think a lot of us put when it comes to the investments for sure. So I'm with you all there. But go ahead.
Oh no, I just want to chime in before we move forward. That's all. But,
go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. I've talked to so many people who are like, "Oh, the stock market gives 10% on average. That's not enough." I need. I'm like, this is an aggregate over decades, right? Like, just take those little wins and they compound, right? And it's really hard for us to just naturally thinking like what compounding does, but it makes a world of a difference. Like, take those little wins, and the person who wins is the person who's consistently making little wins. It's not the person who hits a home run here and then strikes out 10 times. It's the person who's getting on base consistently. And that's really what it is. How do you make those little wins? If you can do it consistently, then you're really winning.
Yeah. Yep. And that's a great point. But so to your point around just the what is your nature and appetite for risk? Because I've also find personal finance and investment to also be a journey, right? Like, it's also a journey. I think about when I first, actually, quick story here. When I first started at Prime Winnie 2014, 11 plus years ago, fresh out of college, barely had any money. And I remember I was working, I was paired with a young engineer as well. And we were working, he was doing his stuff, I was doing my stuff. And I came over his desk for whatever reason, and he had opened up a Fidelity investment account open, and he had $17,000 in there. at 22 changed my life, guys. I'm telling you, there was something about, man, at 22, you had $17,000 in your investment account. And that, actually spurred me around some of my journey and how I think about investment. But I bring that up to say it's as you're going through the journey, your appetite risk or your willingness to take some risk might change because you have a certain level of knowledge along the way. And I think also about my own investments in the pockets of, okay, what's the safe? How do I think about safe, moderately risky, and then, hey, here's some pull of. You are certainly pulling some capital at risk here, and that's okay. You might think safe, I'm putting in the bank, high yield saving account. There might be moderate risk of the stock market. I'm buying index funds, S&P 500. I'm buying NASDAQ. I'm buying just the QQQ and letting the money do that. And then absolutely, there's a small pool where I am buying Bitcoin. I'm not going to lie, right? There is a pool where, yes, I am picking individual stocks and it gives me an excitement and that's all right. That's part of my journey and I'm allowing it to do that. But, my personality is not bet the house. I'm not putting all my chips on the table on no risk investment and letting it. My wife would not be happy if I do that. But it's okay to, hey, start with the basic. Get a good foundations, and then if you want to put 10K at risk because you've got an investment portfolio of $1 million, go at it. If you want to buy some of these meme coins that have dropped, and you think that's how you're gonna get the yacht, go at it. But certainly start with the basic and strong foundation.
Yeah. And then to your point, right? I think as you get older and as you get more into it, your risk appetite is definitely going to change, right? If you think about all of us today, 10 years ago, whatever our risk level was, I can almost bet a bit large amount of money that it's not the same as it is today, right? Because one, we're more educated, right? We have experiences to help support whatever decision that we're taking, right? Our lifestyle has changed. I think everyone, you all have families, you all have spouses, you all have kids. So what you would do as a single individual is different when you're married, as well as it's different when you have kids, because now it's not just yourself that you're thinking about, right? You're thinking about your family, right? Whatever you're doing has to be able to sustain X amount of people, as opposed to, okay, you know what? I need to do what needs to help me sustain one person, right? And our parents are getting older, right? We also might need to include them in the factor of it, right? And have to start thinking about, okay, well, if they're at retire age or if they're retired, do they have enough to sustain themselves, right? Or are we gonna have to be part of that sustaining plan, right? That's the one thing that to this day, I'm proud of my mom, because she made a hard decision growing up to kind of change careers, right? And to get a certain job. And those changes that she made, regardless of how hard and difficult it was for a period of time in our lives, right now, because she's retired, and I'm proud, and I say this all the day, every day, where it's like, I don't gotta give my mom money every month. If I give her something, it's because I choose to, but she's not dependent on her kids in order to have what she wants, and she doesn't have a change in her lifestyle, right? So those are things that we have to think about, right? In terms of like, what decisions are we going to make today? What foundations are we going to set? What changes? How are we going to evolve as time goes on? So that way we can have a better future.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. And I think another thing is your understanding of risk evolves, right? I talk to people who tell me, oh, I will not put my money in the stock market. It's too risky. But they'll give it to someone else to go invest it for them, right? And not, when I say invest, not in the stock market, but, oh, someone has a business idea, right? Someone's building this property. And I'm like, the more you understand how risk is, that also influences how you allocate your capital, right? And I think that's something where a lot of people, especially people who don't necessarily have, finance education, right? They just have a misunderstanding of what risk actually is, and just, this is how I feel, right? Yeah. And again, how we feel is not always the sensible thing, and how we feel is not always accurate, which is why I urge people to try to step away from just your experiences and look at things that kind of give you data that's broader beyond you.
Yeah, knowledge and discipline. I love it. So let me move us on to kind of our segment 2 here. So you actually give us a good segue, because you're talking about the need to evolve and change, and how risk, and we need to be aware of that. Well, a lot is going on in the tech world. I'm pretty sure everybody knows the AI, right? Artificial intelligence. It's everywhere. Since ChatGPT became popular, and now we can't stop hearing about it. And, there was a recent article from CNN News talking about that 41% of employers are saying that they plan to downsize some of the employee workforce by 2030 because of AI. At the same time, right, we recently saw the new president up on stage with the CEO at OpenAI and Oracle and CEO of SoftBank saying they're committing $500 billion to invest in AI infrastructure. Microsoft and so many other big tech companies are investing a lot of money in AI, right, to quote unquote improve productivity. But we're also hearing this could potentially reduce workforce. So let me just come out and say, right, Alhaji, is AI going to take all of our jobs?
I don't know, right? Again, one of me being simple, right? If someone tells me an answer of something with a lot of certainty, that gives me doubt. Okay. The answer to most questions is it depends or I don't know. That's my view, right? So with this one, I generally don't know. What I can say is how do you equip yourself for whatever the future brings, right? And again, I kind of touched on this earlier. It's making the most of today gives you the best opportunity or chance of making the most of tomorrow, right? And making the most of today for me is just upskilling. And what does upskill look like? The fundamentals, I think, are the most important thing. You hear people like Elon Musk or Warren Buffett talk about first principles, but just critical thinking, problem solving. Those things are transferable to almost anything else you want to do, anywhere else you want to go, right? So how do you develop yourself to become that critical thinker, that analytical person? And obviously, if we're talking about AI programming and things like that, are relevant. But for me, I think the most important thing, if you can solve problems, you can think critically, if you're analytical, if you can adapt, you'll be fine wherever you are.
And I think to answer your question, AI is not taking all of our jobs. Okay, let's be clear about that. And like I think AI is definitely it's becoming more popular, more in the news. But like if you look back and you peel a couple of layers back, AI has been in our lives for like a long time, right? In form of various technology. And I still remember being in the audit room and calling restaurants to place orders because we had a paper menu, and the only way to place orders is to sit on the phone and tell someone what you want and have them repeat it back to you and pray to God that they got it right because you don't want to be the one responsible for someone not getting their correct meal. 5 years later, things changed. All these ordering platforms came up and helped simplify lives. And that's kind of similar to what AI is doing now, where it's like it's coming in and it's helping simplify our lives. And to Elijah's point, it's like, how do we upskill, right? How do we make ourselves knowledgeable and how do we evolve and how do we repurpose the skills that we have to kind of work with the change in the change in the environment, the change in technology, and the change in the economy?
I mean, that's spot on. So much changes, and maybe it just comes naturally from just the human element that we fear maybe what we don't know, right? And it's maybe natural, especially when you start hearing these new terms, to definitely start to fear it. But there's no doubt that AI will continue to have significant impact, I think, in the workforce. Now, like you said, you're not sure if it will take all of our jobs. Busola, you made a great point on maybe not all the jobs. Is there any industry, though, that you're saying, hey, if you work in this industry right now, you need to be thinking maybe it might be time to jump ship or think about how AI might come and disrupt the space? Alhaji, to that you say, which industry is top of mind if there are?
Yeah, I mean, again, I have no position when it comes to these things, but this is what I think, right?
Yeah.
But this is just what I think is more likely to be wrong than it is right. But you think of like the creative industries, right? I mean, ChatGPT can now create a logo for you in 2 seconds. I remember, not that long ago, I want to start a company. I'm paying someone $250 for a logo. I'm just going to ChatGPT, right? I think of like film editing and things like that. I think of even, and to me this is counterintuitive, but even the computer scientists, the programmers, I see their demand also shrinking, right? Now where you only need maybe 10% of what you needed before to review code, to make sure it's actually there are no errors, but you don't need the same amount of manpower to program to code, right? So these are all, I mean, even consulting, shoot, make slides for you. It has the ability to influence every facet of our lives. Like I don't say I don't know to diminish it. I say I don't know because the potential is just so high. It's hard for me to actually conceptualize. And which is why, and I don't want to get political, but it's two things, right? One, how do you prepare yourself? But two, I think we need structural changes, right? You need to start having conversations about things like universal basic income, because if people don't aren't needed for jobs, are we just going to say, oh, you only eat what you make,
Yeah.
right? So, but these are just things we should be thinking about.
That's a great point there. I mean, so many industries are. I mean, all industries are certainly getting impacted. And you made just like reference to the consultant piece. I'll tell you right now, I was using ChatGPT plus one other software and just trying to test it out. Hey, give me a framework for a presentation on X amount of topic, and then you can literally copy that and paste it into some of these creating AI platforms, and it generates 15 slides from you, all done in 15 minutes. And you're like, my goodness, right now, the human element to review and make sure that's relevant, it's still there. So certainly some of the skill set that we have today, we have to upskill and reskill ourselves for sure. But Elijah, I agree completely on something that you said, which is just the human ability to critical thinking, problem solving. Those are still human elements that's always going to be valuable regardless of what you are, right? And I always say, like, human imagination and creativity cannot necessarily be capped. Like, there's so much more that we could be doing, maybe we're not doing today, but we always can be doing. And that always gives you a human advantage, I think, over some of these AI platforms. But we all have to perk our ears up and say, hey, we need to reskill, we need to upskill. And then you talk about college majors, and this is where I want to go next, because when I look at the panel that we have, each of you, I mean, all three of us here are dual degrees, right? We have double degrees, we all have bachelors, we all have master's degree, and I think it's done pretty well for us. I would speak for me personally there. But then with AI and where things are, would you all still recommend college as a path and a need for, call it, economic and financial success for the upcoming generation? How would you advise some of the young folks?
I think I would say know your why, right? Because, and this is a conversation that even when I was in college, my mother and I used to fight about it when I told her that one of my friends dropped out. And I was like, that's probably the best thing for them because college was just not for them. They were just going because the parent wanted them to go. So it's basically understanding your why, right? And understanding what are you looking to gain out of it. And at that age, when you're still in high school, you probably don't know, but just don't go through the motions, right? Pick a course that you have some sort of interest in, right? I joke a lot about my sister. She was in school. She went to school for Latin. She got her degree in Latin from Oxford, and look at where she is now. She's worked at various consulting firms, the big names. She's currently at Google, and it's like back then, my mother or I never would have thought, "Wow, this is how her life would end up." But it's like to Elijah's point, right? How do you make yourself relevant, right? How do you transform the skills that you have? And I think a lot of times people also see college as like it's a great foundation, and it pushes you outside your box, right? It gets that critical thinking piece going, and it just sets you up, I think, like for success. But I think at the same time, with the way college prices are going, it's still not for everyone.
Yeah. Roger, you recommending young nephews and young nieces?
It's hard to disagree with Busola. Your why it matters, right? The thing I will add is that what you get from college a lot of times is not just that academic schooling, right? And we talked about AI replacing jobs. We talked about income inequality earlier. Ultimately, again, let's say Armageddon doesn't happen and the Matrix is not real and AI doesn't take over the world, your competition is other human beings, right? We talked about how well the economy is doing, but the issue is that wealth is going to the top. So if you're competitive relative to other people, you're going to eat and you're going to eat in abundance, right? So knowing that, it's how do I position myself to be again, I'm not condoning that only the few get to eat a lot, but if the few get to eat, how do I make sure I'm one of those few who's feasting, right?
Yeah.
And for different people, it varies. What I've seen is that it doesn't matter what you study as much as maybe the networks you build, the relationships you build. And obviously, you want to be intellectually curious, right? You want to have nuance in your perspective. You want to be able to continuously evolve and adapt. Ultimately, it's who do you know and are you in the environment of where you get those opportunities to be the people or one of the people at the table who's getting to eat, because there are people who are eating more than ever right now,
Yeah.
right? And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. It's great, great, great. I'm same here.
Yeah,
I'm not going to necessarily disagree either around,
yeah, yeah,
figuring out your why. And it's hard for me, I would say, for me to also say, hey, no, definitely I want to recommend college, just because I still find it maybe for the majority as to still be a good place of foundation, and not necessarily just about or the degree that you get. It's different. It's a little harder for me. If I do think if you're going to go to college and you're going to take student loans out, I suggest you take a degree. You study something that seems lucrative. I'm not sure if college is a place to just go study your passion when you're spending 50, 60, $100,000 per year on it. That is my take, but maybe that's me getting a little older and sounding like some of my parents. However, also college also, and Alhaji, you mentioned this, also provides the opportunity to network and build relationships. And I think maybe that's even the more critical element when you are with someone over a 4 year period and you build a bond and you build a relationships, and you never know how some of these folks that you never really know how these relationships develop 5, 10. I'm seeing even in my own lives and my own career where a former classmate of mine, when I was getting my MBA, we did maybe one assignment together, but we kept in touch. 5, 7 years later, I'm looking for a reference to get a job, and he was critical in that, and that's allowed me and to do okay. Like those things pay off, and maybe right now college might be one way to certainly get that. Maybe there's other avenues, but overall, I think college still serves as a foundation for that.
yeah. I agree with that, and I think that what's often overlooked is that these institutions themselves are a network, right?
Mm-hmm.
They give you the opportunity to, whether it's connect with someone who's an alumni or just purely distant signaling, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you went to this school, so you must be good. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also something valuable when you're considering college. What I've realized though recently is that, again, what you study matters a lot less than I thought. Someone who studied engineering thinking that's how I'm going to eat,
Yeah.
I've realized that what you study matters a lot less than who you know, and then are you sharp, right? Like, and I think that's a good thing about engineering, where you're actually forced to think critically. You're being nurtured and developed to be a problem solver, right? But if you're a problem solver and you studied arts and crafts or basket weaving, I think you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna, and you go to the right place, the right school with the right network.
Mm-hmm.
You can do whatever you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something I didn't always know. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah, and to that point, I used to like back in my younger days, I used to attend the National Black Association of Accountants, the NBA. And one of the saying that kind of stuck with me, even though I never really took much to it back then, was your network is your net worth. And I just like, or whatever, because I'm not a good social speaking person. Like, I don't do small talks. But as I get older, I'm like, that really holds a lot of volume, because the people in your network can help open doors for you or close doors for you, right? Because you just don't know, like Toyyib said, right? When someone that you've known is going to help you get somewhere, like it's going to open a door that otherwise would have remained closed. And I think that's one of the critical things that I feel like a lot of schools are doing a better job these days. It's about networking, meeting people, and like not only meeting people, but also staying in those relationships and building those relationships, because you just never know who you're going to run into in the future.
yeah. No, that's a great point, and right, and people need to remember that. I think right, people really need to remember that. Like, hey, it's important to be almost intentional about the community that you cultivate and to build these relationships, because you're right, it absolutely, you're right, your network is your net worth, absolutely. And the more of those kind of people that the more that they're willing to open up doors for you and build those relationships. And maybe that's something college students are not even thinking about. It's like, hey, how do I just do my major, figure it out after I graduate and just waste those 4 years? It's like, no, like, hey, wake up and look around, wake up and look around. And that's why I'm friends with you both, right? Hey, wake up and look around. Who are the smart people in your network who are doing amazing things? Because you're right, like now I'm starting to see it in my own professional lives that, okay, people are getting promoted, people are doing well, and you're able to tap into those to just understand what's going on and open up doors. So that's still valuable regardless of what the future looks like for AI. Because at the end of the day, humans are going to be the one making the decision how we're leveraging AI, how they're building their companies, who are they hiring, who are they staffing it with. So relationship building is always going to be key. All right, guys. So we're getting to the bottom here around our last section. Last session, quick takes, right? Quick takes, little hot. We'll do a little bit of prediction. Alhaji, I know you don't want prediction, but I'm gonna get you on a hot spot here and do some predictions for us. Mortgage rates. So let's start with the first one. Mortgage rates, right? Recently hit 7%, and now potentially higher, longer. We're hearing higher for longer. But here's my ask to you first. Will mortgage rates be higher or lower by the end of the year? So 7%, higher or lower by the end of the year?
I let Busola go first.
Prediction, okay? We won't. We're not betting the house on this, okay? We're not betting the house. Prediction
I,
only.
I feel like it's gonna get higher. Like there's not just enough data to just convince me otherwise. I feel like it's gonna get higher, and in the next 1 or 2 years, there's gonna be a burst.
Interesting. Okay, higher. One vote for higher. Alhaji, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm gonna edge this a little, but everything that I see tells me is going to be higher, right? I think fiscal spending is going to go up. Everything looks good. With that said, if I had to bet, I'd probably bet lower because this is just not sustainable, right? It's not sustainable, and that's why I think like something's got to give.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, okay, see, we got you lower there. There we go. I'll break the tie, and actually, I'm with you, Alhaji. I actually do think it'll be lower. Now, lower just means a little bit, slightly below 7%. I do not necessarily see. I'm not seeing a 5.5% mortgage rates. I just not this year, anyways. I just don't see it. And I told some of my friends, listen, if we ever go back to 3%, something bad has happened. I'm not. If you see 3%, guys, I'm not sure we'll all be happy under those conditions of why we get there. So I do see 6.5, 7 kind of being the new norm for this year, and we'll see where that goes. Okay, perfect. So we go to the second one, which builds on slightly on the mortgage rates. There's been talks around the Federal Reserve, right, making cuts once again to the rates this year. Last year, I believe they did 4. Which I tell everybody on this pod, I correctly guessed that the first cut was coming in Q3 last year. So check the recordings there. This year, there's forecast around 2 cuts, but we're saying, hey, inflationary data say, hey, well, we're getting close to that 2% target, right? What is your take around how many cuts we might see? Do you think 2 is the potential target there, or higher or lower?
Again, tough question because there are all these externalities, right? Now you have the Office of the President attempting to directly put pressure on the Fed, which is a whole nother can of worms. But I'm going to go with 1. I think, again, earnings just look too good. Unemployment is low. Again, Fed investment, stock market is doing numbers, records every week. I can't. I'm gonna go with 1. If I have to.
There we go.
Yeah.
Solo.
I was gonna say 0, but maybe I'll go with 1 as well because I just like to the point that Elijah made, right? With the way, especially with this new administration that we have and the things that we're seeing for first, few days in office. It's gonna be an interesting year. It's gonna be an interesting 4 years. I feel like they're not gonna make any cuts.
So,
and I hope I'm wrong. But I feel like they're not going to make any cuts.
Oh, okay. See, I was initially going to go with 1 as well, but then when I started, and Alhaji's point, and then Busola, you made the point as well around new administration trying to put pressure right on the Federal Reserves. I'm going more than 2 actually. Now that I've thought about that, I'm going 3. Check the tapes. You all will be back again, and we'll see who's right there. So. Last one on quick take, and this is, call it controversial or not, but we all seen a rise in young couples who are moving in together earlier in their relationship as a way to save money and on housing and living costs. Sorry, an article came out in the last year that we're seeing that happen more and more around some of our young couples. Is this a good idea? Last take. Is this a good idea?
There's a lot of different parts. There's a religion, there's the cultural, there's just so many pieces in there. But I'm all about saving money at the end of the day, which is part of the reason why I continued living at home even when I didn't have to. So I would say at the end of the day, what's your risk appetite, right? Is that something that's important to you, right? Are you thinking, you know what, right now my rent is 2K, but if I move in with my partner that our relationship is solid, I can cut that in half and use that money for something else. So it's like, I think it's a great idea if you have a solid relationship.
Yeah. Alhaji.
Yeah, I agree with Busola. It's just like any partnership, you want to vet the person, you want to make sure they're worth embarking on a journey with. And if you think they're worthy of that, then why not? There's risk to everything. So, and I actually think in some ways you could argue it mitigates other types of risk, right? Because now you've actually lived with this person. You know if there's someone you could truly live with, someone who's it might accelerate your ability to making that decision. Is this permanent or is this ending soon?
Now, I would say it's a good idea if there's more than just trying to save money. I think if you are trying to move in, hopefully it's hey, and I don't know if the idea is hey, moving with your temporary boyfriend that hey, I just need a place to live for the next 6 months, and then this relationship is going to be over. But if it is a hey, there's a long-term future potential here, it might be worth it. Listen, housing and living costs are so high these days that I get it. Not everybody has the luxury of maybe stay at home or just be able to live on their own. So we certainly cannot deny the fact that it's tough, certainly for certain people. So good idea, but hopefully it's for leads to long-term relationships. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's recording of the Wealth Wave podcast. I greatly appreciate you, Alhaji and Busola, for your answers, for coming out here and educating the people and sharing your stories and your knowledge. What a great session. So, closing thoughts. Alhaji, any?
It's good. Busola, you talked about it's going to be interesting year, 4 years. Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens, especially in terms of what the Fed policy is, Fed fiscal policy in terms of is the government going to be spending a ton of money, right? We're already looking to raise the debt ceiling, and I have my guess is that this new administration is going to spend a lot of money. And again, that's not going to bode well for Toyyib's prediction, but we'll see. It's going to excite. I think it's going to be a really entertaining time, right? And a very exciting period to be alive. You take that how you want.
So you have no faith in the DOG department? What is
The
DOGE department? You have no faith in it?
oh
It's supposed to
the
help us save money, and trim the fat.
yeah it. I think it's just clear that the new administration wants to spend a lot of money. Again, I'm not saying that's bad or good. Take that how you want. I think the new administration measures its success, or the president measures his success largely by how the stock market does, right? And I think if those things go how they want, then it's just hard for the Fed to raise rates, right? Or to lower rates. Sorry. So it'll be interesting though.
What's all the last thoughts?
Yeah.
I would just say I think everyone just needs to continually educate themselves, and reevaluate what your risk appetite is, and also just have those honest discussion with yourself and whoever's in part of your financial household, because it's going to be an interesting year, interesting 4 years, and we just need to make sure that we're able to weather the storm.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, that's a wrap on our end. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Wealth Wave podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share.